I'm born and bred local. I mean, I grew up in a property, run a construction business of my own, and then I stepped into Roma Town Council back in 2004 to 2008. That's where I cut my teeth, and I learnt there were a lot of very, say old, I suppose, councillors there that I certainly learnt a lot from. And then I came onto the new regional council in 2012, and I've now served 2 terms at Maranoa Regional Council.
It's quite a risk for a councillor to decide to throw their hat in the ring for mayor, because obviously you have a lot to lose. Does that bear sort of heavily on your mind, given your experience, given that obviously you want to serve your community?
It is, but I mean, as I've always said, I'm not a career politician, and I have stepped in there to try and make things better for my community. So if the community chooses someone else, they choose someone else, I'll quite happily step out and let them go. But I mean, I do believe that when I did put my hand up, I mean, there was no one else standing against the current mayor. I honestly believe that the path forward that he's proposing is fraught with danger for our region, economically and certainly from the council's viewpoint of sustainability, and that's why I stood.
Is it fair to say that if the mayor was someone that you were happy with or felt that you could work with, then you wouldn't have run for mayor? I mean, you mentioned you're not a career politician, or would this have come up as a better way to achieve your aims anyway?
Oh, no, mate. Look, I'd be happy to be just a councillor. Despite what people might think, I am actually a shy person, so I'd naturally would rather just be a councillor and just get in and do the job there. But in times of trouble, I think that good people need to step forward and throw their hat in the ring and make changes. And that's what I've done.
Is it more about offering an alternative to the current mayor, or are there things that you want to achieve that aren't on the current agenda?
I think it's more about the sustainability. Like, I think that, as I said, the other proposals that have come forth in this election campaign from particularly one of our candidates there are unsustainable. Our region will falter if those go ahead. The problem is that it's like a short-term hit. You get a benefit now, but then you pay twice as much later on. Yeah. So, I mean, it might mean that rates are going up by double digits in the next term. Yeah. And how are you going to afford that? And you're going to be that far behind with looking after your assets. And we've got substantial little assets here, you know, for a very small population. We've got a lot of really good assets here, and we do need to maintain them. And I don't think you can afford to maintain them unless you're at least keeping up with local government CPI. For me, I'd rather see us focus on the delivery of the essential services that our community wants. I mean, I've been a strong advocate in the past for water and sewage. I believe that our roads and rubbish, all those sort of things need to come first. And I mean, I had a phone call this afternoon from a ratepayer in the town of Roma here that live in our priority infrastructure area, and yet they're still on a dirt road. And I mean, that is one of the things that I want to focus on, is trying to bring the standard of our road network up to scratch. And admittedly, we've got a lot of roads in our region too, and a very big region, just a bit smaller than Tasmania in land area, and with a very small population. So I think we're around about 12,800 people in that size region. So very small rate base with which to deliver what the community wants. So if you look at this year's budget, $144 million budget, and yet our general rates, without all our extra fees and charges, our general rates, we net around about 23 million. So everything else comes from chasing grants and external funding, and also the businesses that the council runs on behalf of the community. And that's something that regional councils do. They do run businesses. Yeah, we're certainly up against it, the pump, but I mean, I think that moving forward, I think our focus is going to be clearly on growing population, encouraging business, and that's going to be my focus too, if elected.
Would it be fair to say that one of your top priorities would also be to, continue a pretty feisty campaign to get more funding or more share of the state government and federal government tax revenue for local government?
Oh, definitely. And, that has been something that I have continuously raised. I just don't think that the general public understand why we continually raise this. But I mean, if we just go back to water and sewerage, for example, the state government in 2009 ceased the WASP scheme, which was the water and sewerage program. Now, that last year of that program alone, $140 million was put into local government around Queensland. 140 million. Now, between then and 2019, so over a 10-year period, that means we've lost $1.4 billion that would have gone into local government that state have kept. So in 2019, the total amount of money spent by state and federal government on water and sewerage infrastructure alone in grants amounted to around about 25 million. So there's a huge deficit there that the councils are picking up the tab, and I mean that falls back onto the ratepayers of our region. So it is very important as local government that we advocate very strongly to the state government to reinstate the funding for that water and sewerage, which is what we have been doing. And similarly with the federal government with their stopping the indexation of the financial assistance grants there. So our region gets around about $15 million from the federal government. Since they've stopped indexation, we've gone from 1% down to 0.55% of federal government revenue. So if they were to reinstate that to 1%, we would get an extra 14 million, well, it's 13.8 million roughly, dollars per year. Now, for us to pick that up in rates, we would have to increase rates by around about 59%.
Which clearly is not going to go over well, and it's not going to happen.
No, so there's a deficit that councils are trying to deal with, and a lot of that has started since around about 2009.
Tyson Golder is campaigning on not just himself, but getting a team of councillors in what seems to represent some sort of a voting bloc. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I don't believe there's room for a voting blocks or party politics in local government, and I think that's been the strength of local government. I've been involved with a lot of other mayors and councillors from right across Queensland through LGAQ, and the vast majority of them do not agree with party politics or groupings or that in local government. And I think the strength is when you've got independent councillors making decisions based on the information that they've got and their own conscience. I think you get the best decision. And it just means that you're not always voting with the same people on every single motion. So, it gets really mixed up because everyone's got such diverse views. But I think you end up with the best decision at the end of the day, because I know that I'm not right all the time. So by collectively working with the other councillors and putting all your minds together, I do believe that we more often than not end up with the right decision.
You're attending a lot of forums where ratepayers will be asking you questions. Presumably at some stage you can stand up and state your case as to why you deserve to be elected into the top job at Maranoa Regional Council. What would you say to that?
Well, I've got 12 years experience, and I think experience is very important, particularly for the mayor. And I'm also I represent a change for the future, so I know that one of the other candidates was voted out last term. This candidate, the current mayor, hasn't really delivered a very cohesive council. He's had 4 years to do it. He hasn't delivered it. I am offering you an alternative to both those people, and I have the experience, and I have the ability to deliver for the community.